On today's show, we discuss the Leafs filling their assistant coach opening, Pacioretty's future with the team, and could Toronto make a splashy, controversial signing in free agency? We'll touch on all that and more on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Thank you to our everydayers who are subscribed and take in the podcast each and every day. Just a reminder that although the Leaf season is over, we are still here each and every day, and we'll take this podcast all the way through the playoffs, through the off season, all the way until we get you set for the 25-26 season. So just a reminder that although the season is over for Toronto, the podcast is not. And subscribe if you enjoy the show. What's going on, Dave? How are you feeling on a Monday?
Feeling pretty good. My feet
Your weekend?
Great weekend. I went to the Canadian Open on Sunday.
Did you lay eyes on Colt Nost while you were there, Dave?
No, did not see one Colt Nost. I know exactly what he did though. I watched it.
Yeah, so for those who aren't aware, Colt Nost is he played.
He's a former golfer, yeah.
Yeah, former golfer. He's now reporting. He's an analyst for CBS and the Golf Network, and decided to wear a Brad Marchand Florida Panthers jersey out on the golf course. Was it Friday, Saturday? One of the days he was there.
Yeah.
He ended up wearing. I think it was Friday because I think I saw Hazy B snap a pic. I think they're maybe talking about it on the show, but yeah, that's such a troll move by Colt Nost there to rock a Brad Marchand Florida Panthers jersey on Canadian soil, but in Toronto nonetheless. Like there's no player that is more hated in the city, I think, than Brad Marchand.
Yeah, and I think they were asked, so what made you decide to go with this jersey? He's like, it was the only jersey I could find in the store.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, really? You tell me there wasn't a Matthews jersey or a Nylander jersey or a Matthew Nyes jersey, only a Brad Marchand Panthers jersey. I find that suspect. Very suspect.
I do too. And so yeah, it was fun though, because like the Canadians really get into these sort of events, and I was at the rink for a little bit. Like I had like a club area that I was sitting in, but then we decided to walk around for a bit.
Yeah.
So Hadwin and Pendrith came to the rink at 14, and Hadwin hits his tee shot and he throws on a Team Canada Four Nations jersey.
Nice.
If I have a suggestion for anybody that goes to the Canadian Open going forward, sit yourself at number 14 for a bit, because the vibes are
immaculate.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like it, right? It's almost as if they're trying to replicate like the waste management, right? With that hole there at the waste management, they're trying to replicate that with the rink hole. They want it to get a little rowdy, right? They want, that Happy Gilmore vibe at the rink hole. I've heard lots of great things. I didn't get to go down there myself, but I heard lots of great things about the Canadian Open. Heard Rory give the Leafs a little shout out. Talked about, hey, if I can win the Masters, then the Leafs can win the Cup. And well, and Roy didn't put together a masterpiece over the weekend, did he?
No, he hit a shot so bad, okay, that the crowd had no idea where it went. Like, usually people can track the ball, find it, and they all scurry and run over to it. He hit one, it went over a crowd of people, and they just stood there like as if, all right, when's he gonna shoot?
Yeah.
But he already shot. It went over your heads.
Yeah, tough weekend. He's since he won, like, he really has struggled actually since winning the Masters, which is kind of bizarre. I was trying to find himself or what, but it's funny because I remember we made the parallel. We weren't the only ones, but like a lot of Leaf fans were grasping at straws earlier in the year. And when he won the Masters in April, it's like, oh, so maybe this is the year. Another one of those things where it's like, hey, things are all happening and things are all coming into place perfectly for Toronto to possibly get it done, get over the hump, and win their first cups in '67. And they did not. We know how it all played out. All right, let's get into our Leafs discussion today. There's actually quite a bit of news coming off of the weekend, and some reporting that we've seen, possibly a return from Max Pacioretty. We can get into that. We can get into Nick Kypreos was talking about the possibility of the Leafs maybe going after an alternative Florida Panther free agent that's not Sam Bennett. We can get into that conversation in just a moment. But the Maple Leafs rounded out their coaching staff. We talked about last week how the Seattle Kraken had came and plucked Lane Lambert off of Craig Berube's coaching staff. So there was a vacancy open. We weren't sure if they were going to fill it because they have a couple extra assistant coaches, but they did. And they end up bringing in Derek Lalonde to join Berube's staff. He'll come in and be an assistant on the bench. And obviously, I think a lot of us know Derek Lalonde pretty well, just watching the games and watching the Sportsnet broadcast. And he was obviously, did a great job there breaking down the game. So he's pretty well known, I would say, within this market. And best of all, Dave, what makes me pretty excited is you talk about wanting to bring in a guy who can change maybe the fabric or DNA, or bring in guys who have that winning DNA. This guy's got two cups, yep. Right? Won a couple Stanley Cups with the Tampa Bay Lightning when he was on John Cooper's staff. So he knows a thing or two when it comes to knowing what to do in those critical moments to get the job done. So bringing in Derek Lalonde, I think, will be a very valuable addition to Berube's staff.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. This is a guy who's watched this Leafs team, who's coached against this Leafs team quite a bit. So he knows exactly, I think, where he can have an impact. It's a good hire. You talk about the pedigree he has with the time of the Lightning. Like, that's when the Lightning were at their best when he was on that staff. And so, yeah, I kind of hope that he can, losing Lane Lambert, not ideal, but I think he'll be an ideal replacement. I'm curious to see what exactly they'll have him work on. I'm sure he may just replace kind of what Lambert did, but I have to kind of look and see what he did in Tampa. What was his focus? But I think it's going to be a good. It's going to be a good match for a good match for this Leafs team.
Yeah, I agree. So bringing in a guy who's got tremendous experience, a guy who has a winning pedigree, certainly a positive for the Maple Leafs. All right, let's take a quick break. Let's come back. There was a report on Max Pacioretty's future in the NHL, so we'll discuss that. And which prize free agent might the Maple Leafs pluck out of Florida? That conversation is also coming up next here in the Locked On Leafs podcast.
Today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. I've been using it a lot lately just to figure out where a lot of my money is going towards. Where am I spending? Where am I overspending in certain areas? And how can I potentially save money? And I also like the fact that it's all convenient in one app. I can track all what I'm earning, what I'm spending, and I can even plan long-term goals. And if you work with a partner, it's smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year.
Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Dave, I am reading currently that there was a reported deal for Mitch Marner that was nixed at the deadline. We had heard that there was a possibility of Marner to Carolina. James Myrtle is now reporting that there was a deal discussed that was a three-way trade that would have sent Mitch Marner not to Carolina, but to the Vegas Golden Knights.
Ooh.
And that never got through because apparently Carolina and Vegas were unable to find the right assets to complete the deal. Which is very interesting. So at first we had obviously heard that there was a trade in place, or at least that Marner was reportedly asked to waive to go to Carolina. There may have been some other options out there that ultimately never came to fruition. But I find that very, very interesting.
Yeah, I do too, because we had already heard that Vegas and the Leafs had discussed a Marner trade last offseason. So I initially saw it, I was like, yeah, we already heard that the Leafs and Vegas talked, and I'm like, oh, this is like way more than that. So like, it's clear two things. Vegas was very much interested in Mitch Marner, and Mitch Marner was definitely not interested in going to Carolina. That's also, I think, apparent too. Yeah, I would have loved to know what that full trade would have looked like.
Well, it would have landed the Leafs, Mikko Rantanen.
Mm-hmm.
So Rantanen was reportedly the return coming from Carolina to Toronto, and then Toronto was sending Marner over to Vegas, and then the report is that it was unclear what Vegas was offering up, but clearly not enough, as the deal never really made it to the finish line. But that was the crux of it. So the Leafs were trying to pry Rantanen out of Carolina, and then they were going to send Marner to Vegas, and then whatever Toronto and Vegas could have mustered up to give to Carolina for Rantanen. Clearly, that trade never really actually followed through. But what it does tell me is you're right. It obviously strengthens the fact that Vegas have significant interest in Mitch Marner. And I think that they might be the front runner for me right now to sign Marner. If he doesn't come into Toronto, if he doesn't re-sign here and stay as a Maple Leaf, like, I think that's the team who I would put up at the top of the list for players, or for teams that should be going all in, or probably will be going all in to bring in a Mitch Marner.
I said this on the squad show. Like, people ask me, what's my top landing destination? I said it's probably a team like Vegas if he wants to go to a contender. That's, he know. I mean, everyone knows Vegas is also just playing for every big free agent that's out there. Like, if there's a player available, they're going to try their best to get that player. So there's a lot of benefits to playing in Vegas too. Martin doesn't have to be the guy in Vegas, and there's potentially an avenue for which Vegas can actually make it work. Because I know everyone's like, oh, how's Vegas going to get the cap? Vegas has done things in the past to ensure that they can make players fit within the cap. And that potentially could involve Alex Pietrangelo, who is... We know Alex Pietrangelo wasn't fully healthy last year because he didn't play in the Four Nations. He was dealing with an injury. Yeah, and he also was dealing with an injury for the Cup during the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah,
so I there's a possibility that maybe if he's placed on LTIR, there's your money. There's your money, like pretty much, because they got cap space. They can also move out one more guy.
Yeah, like, as of now, they've got $9.5 million. They don't really have all that much to sign. But they can open up that cap space and bring in Marner with Pietrangelo's money. And Elliot Friedman was talking about this on the 32 Thoughts podcast, how he had heard that it's not a lock that Pietrangelo will be made available to Canada at the Olympics because he might not play next season. That's a possibility. He's definitely weighing his options still, but that's a possibility. And if that's the case and he can't play and they just stick him on injured, right, LTIR for the rest of his career, basically open up that money, well, now you finally have the cash to go out and sign a Mitch Marner. And it does appear that they are heavily interested in him because last summer and then again midway through the season, they reportedly had tried to acquire him. Now it'll cost them nothing but money, nothing but cap.
Yep.
So they don't have to give up any players or prospects or picks or anything. They could just straight up sign them. And I think that they'll probably end up making a pretty good run. FanDuel still has them as just the fourth best odds to land in Vegas at plus 500, which I think is tremendous value. If you want to go and bet the market, I see it's tied with Carolina at plus 500 in third, technically, I suppose. But the Leafs still at plus 450, as are the Chicago Blackhawks. So right now, I don't know. The betting odds don't suggest that Vegas is the leader of the pack, but the reporting and everything else kind of suggests that they might be the leader for Mitch Marner. All right, we'll take one more quick break. When we come back, who could the Leafs be targeting in free agency? There's a couple of Panthers that might be available. Which one would you rather, Dave? We'll get to that conversation and more next here in the Locked On Leafs podcast. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leafs centric podcast. Thank you so much to the everydayers who come back and listen to the show each and every day, and thank you to the newcomers who are still stopping by for a quick listen today. If you enjoy it, hopefully you can subscribe to the show. That'd be greatly appreciated. You can find it wherever you get your podcast. Brand new episodes coming out each and every day, Monday through Friday. And you can also find it on YouTube as well. So, along with the report of the Mitch Marner failed three-way trade, James Myrtle also reporting about Max Pacioretty's future in the NHL and a potential reunion with the Maple Leafs, Dave?
Yeah, it's, we kind of thought that maybe he was going to be leaning towards retirement after the season because he talked a lot about, his family, doing what's right for his family, and also the fact that, again, it was another season where he couldn't get past injuries that, shortened his season. But I think it sounds like Myrtle said that he's leaning towards a return after Leafs expressed considerable interest in keeping him. And I don't see the reason why the Leafs wouldn't have done this, because in the postseason, he was one of their more effective depth forwards.
Yeah, totally.
He was one of the more effective forwards in crunch time as well.
Those
so
critical moments.
When you talk about DNA, he has that DNA that the Leafs need in terms of coming through in the moments that you need, not panicking, right? Having the kind of the cool demeanor. And so it's if they can convince Pacioretty to come back, that's just one more thing you can tick off the box, right? Having that depth up front would be very important if they can bring him back.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not going to cost a whole lot. Like, he's at a point now where he's just looking for that cup, right? And he wants to try and do it here in Toronto. Sounds like he'd be willing to take, a shorter, a short-term 1-year deal and closer to league minimum, maybe $1 million. It sounds like that's all he's looking to do right now. And if I'm Toronto, I'm making that signing. I'd like to bring him back and see what he can do. If he could remain healthy throughout the season, you've got a nice player who can fill out your bottom six there, who can go and potentially play in some critical moments late in the game, in your top six and score a big goal or two. We saw it happen throughout the playoffs, and what he can do when he's playing at his best. And he brings that edge and physicality too, which the Leafs obviously love. So that is one player who we think could be returning. A couple other guys too who are pending UFAs. Like we talk a lot about John Tavares and we talk about Mitch Marner, obviously, but the Leafs do have a couple other guys. Like Steven Lorentz is a pending UFA as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
We haven't heard anything about Steven Lorentz, but he's a guy too who I wouldn't mind bringing back. Thought he played exceptional this year for Toronto.
Thought he was going to get a contract during the year with the way that he was playing, right? Kind of, he brought a different element on that fourth line, right? We usually have fourth liners who are, they're good, strong defensively, good on the forecheck, but he chipped in a few goals here and there. Like that's something the fourth line hadn't really been able to do at times. We saw him move up and down the lineup, big on the penalty kill. Like he's kind of the perfect fourth liner to bring back. So I'm kind of surprised they didn't do that deal, right? Because he's not going to cost a lot either. This is a guy who wants to play in Toronto, right? So maybe we'll see something, unless they feel that they have other options that might be better for the fourth line. But I don't know, like for the price, I don't know how much better you're going to get than a Steven Lorentz, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it works, right? Like he chipped in. So he had 8 goals. He had 19 points as a fourth line winger. Played a shutdown role in the playoffs. His time on ice increased from 10.5 minutes in the regular season to over 12 minutes in the playoffs. So his, when the going got tough, Berube looked down the bench and often found Steven Lorentz and said, get out there, right? So that there's that trust factor in the coach, and I get it. It's not a sexy, splashy signing or re-signing or extension like a Marner or Tavares would be, but I think it'd be an important one. So you bring back Lorentz, you bring back, Pacioretty, and you really start to solidify, the depth that you created. I thought the Leafs had decent depth. I think they could use another scorer within the middle six, and that's, I think something that they should probably look at bringing in, especially obviously if they lose out on Marner and Tavares. But in terms of filling out your bottom six, I think that Pacioretty and Lorentz, if they could bring those two guys back into the folds, I'd sign up for that for sure. Speaking of some top 6 additions, though, Dave, there was a discussion had over the weekend. Nick Kypreos kind of brought this up, and Leafs Nation kind of ran with it. There's been a lot of talk about the Leafs maybe having some interest in Sam Bennett if John Tavares walks, and maybe they try and replace Tavares with Sam Bennett of the Florida Panthers. And, well, Kipper kind of put a little bit of cold water on Bennett to Toronto, saying he doesn't see that as a likely situation, but did say that he believes that Brad Marchand would be a more likely option for the Maple Leafs. So my question to you is, Dave, like who would you rather have in a Maple Leafs uniform next season specifically? Like, obviously, if you're to sign these two players, like Bennett would be a more longer term deal and Marchand would be a shorter term deal. So, it's tough to talk about contracts, but for next season specifically, like which of those two players would you prefer to have in Toronto?
I still prefer Bennett. I think the production has been there. Like he has scored. I can't
the postseason production has been there.
Yes, the postseason. He has scored more goals in this postseason than Mitch Marner has scored in his career, is what I saw.
Oh, is that fact?
Like he brought that up. I'm like, that can't be true. And then I looked it up, and I'm like, yeah. Like Mitch Marner has 13 career goals in the Stanley Cup playoffs in 70 games, and Sam Bennett has, just in this playoffs alone, just going to bring up the playoff stats, 13.
Yeah, same amount.
I think he's also recorded I can't remember how many of those were on the road.
Like 12 or 11 or 12 roads.
I think it's like the most.
Yeah.
And I'm just, first off, I'm surprised that's a record. But yeah, he is making, and good. This is not just a one time where he is produced in the playoffs, right? Like this is the most he's had in a playoff run, but he had 14 points the year in 19 games the year before, and 15 and 20 the year before that.
Yeah.
Like his production goes up in the playoffs. Now in the regular season, obviously it's not at the same level.
No, and it is curious. It's like, how much could you really pay a guy whose career high is 50 points in the regular season, right? Like that's a worthwhile question. You going to give a guy 9-10 million, throw that in his jeans, and he's only going to give you 50 points in the regular season? Like, it's kind of interesting to talk about, because if he doesn't live up to those playoff numbers, like, Bennett's clearly not worth that money. And in Toronto, that'll get scrutinized. In Florida, yeah, I mean, there's no pressure. Like, we talk about pressure a lot. There's not a whole lot of pressure when you play in Florida. So he's able to kind of come up, show up, and play. Will that money change him, right? Will that change the pressure? And maybe we'll see him kind of gripping the stick a little more, kind of like we see happen with Mitch Marner here in the playoffs, right? And a lot of these other guys that play with pressure. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there with Sam Bennett. I don't know. I think if we're talking next year specifically, like 1 year, man, as much as people hate Brad Marchand, he is the player who you hate him if he's not on your team, but man, you love him if he's on your team. And I know that there's a lot of bad blood and there's a long time hatred of this player, but if you could somehow get Brad Marchand on your team for one season, I think you get it done. I really think that you could probably do that. Like, he's still playing at a very high level. Look at him. He just ended double overtime with a breakaway goal the other day. And that wasn't the first breakaway goal he had. Yeah, like 2-goal game, and like Marshy could still play. He's still motivated to play, and he is a character. And again, when we talk about wanting to bring in a winning DNA, right? That's what Brad Treliving wants to do. Change the DNA of this group. Between those two players, Brad Marchand and Sam Bennett, right? Marchand has one more, and I think if he comes into this room, into Toronto, he would have a much larger voice than Sam Bennett would, right? Like, Bennett walks in, like, yeah, he's a veteran, but I don't think he necessarily can, come in and overtake a Nylander or a Tavares or a Matthews, but Marchand kind of can, right? Like, he can own a voice in that locker room.
It's not even just owning a voice, though. It's like you see his demeanor, right?
Yeah.
He's like, they were talking about Game 7 being a high pressure game between the Leafs and Panthers. Like, these guys went to a cup final. What do you mean? I think that has more pressure than a Game 7 in round 2. Like, it's that sort of that. Like, he has those little things he says. You see him in like the hallway before games too. Like, it doesn't just seem like the moment's not too big for him.
No, he's been there. That's why. It's because he's been there, right? Like, and for years we talked about the culture, the winning culture, and that DNA within that Bruins dressing room. And although, again, Leaf fans hated what that culture produced, many Leaf exits is what that culture produced. He was a big part of it. And if you could take a little bit of that and instill that within this locker room, I think you do that. So I don't know if you ask me, if it's like, all right, you've got 1 year, $7.5, $8 million, who would you rather sign? I think I'd rather take Marchand over Bennett for a 1 year deal.
My issue with Bennett too is how much term is he gonna want to?
Well, that's why I said, like, for next season specifically. Like, that's why I wanted to just have that conversation, not really with the term, because that changes it. Clearly, if you're bringing in Marchand, it's going to be on a short-term deal. If you're bringing in Bennett, he's going to want long-term deal. So that changes that conversation. But if we're talking, both are willing to take a 1 year deal in the $8 million range, who would you rather have? I'd take Marchand on my team.
Yeah, I would probably take him too. I would take both if you could, realistically, but I don't know. I don't know if that one's probably not going to be as realistic, though.
Yeah, probably not. And then the last little bit of news that we heard kind of leak out into the universe over the weekend. Sounds like the Maple Leafs are going to invite Austin Elliott to development camp. He's
and training camp apparently too.
And training camp, and training camp. He was the goaltender. Is he UDFA? I guess he'd be UDFA for the London Knights. So the Memorial Cup winning London Knights, that is. So again, a winning pedigree, bringing in winners into the team, into the group, and starting from the ground zero, right from the roots, bringing them in from junior. So congrats to Austin Elliott, great junior career, and we'll see what he can do. Maybe a few years down the road, he can check himself into a Leafs backup role at some point. Speaking of goaltenders, by the way, I saw something over the weekend that made me think about the goalie situation in Toronto moving forward. Tomorrow, I want to get into that. I want to talk about the future in net for the Maple Leafs, and maybe the goalie tandem won't look the same next summer. I'll explain on tomorrow's show what I mean by that. So we'll get into that on Tuesday. But that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We're back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.